Keys to victory, Cody. What do the Texas Longhorns need to do to come out of Gainesville with a W? We're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about Steve Sarkisian meeting with the media today for a quick availability post-practice, the last time that we will get to address him prior to the team leaving. Said a couple interesting things. It looks like we're going to get our first look at one of the new supposedly impact players here as far as the wide receivers are concerned. First, let's tell you about our great sponsor, the Man Eye Institute. See life better at the Man Eye Institute. You can give them a call today, 1-844-WOW-2020, 844-WOW-2020. The Man Eye Institute for all of your LASIK needs, for all of your vision needs. They're going to take care of you there. One of the oldest and best in the whole nation for a reason. The Man Eye Institute, our presenting sponsor. Thanks so much to them. See life better. 844-WOW-2020, the Man Eye Institute. All right, Cody. So Sark met with the media today. A couple things I thought was interesting before we get into the keys to victory. Maybe mostly so. He didn't come right out and say it, but it looks like we're probably going to get to see Emmett Mosley the fifth for the first time here versus Florida.
Yeah, he was asked basically. He was asked in quote. It sounds like Emmett Mosley's back at practice this week. What does it mean to the team? And he answered it in a very positive fashion. I thought it was most notable. He brought up length, which we know Emmett's 6'2", 205. He said he's the third lengthy player like Parker Livingstone and Ryan Wingo, but he's also mentioned just how good of a run blocker he was. That was what it felt like was the most emphasis that he put behind his words, was how important and how good of a
no block, no rock.
No block, no run. Right? That's the Chris Jackson thing. It's like you don't get on the field unless you can run block. Yeah. And I mean, that'll obviously put him on the field early, you would think, right? And so, yeah, I mean, if he's practicing and the availability reports have come through positive so far this week, it sounds like we're probably going to get to see the debut of Emmett Mosley, the fifth, in Burnt Orange.
Yeah, I think based on the injury report that we haven't got tonight's injury report yet, but based on the one from yesterday where they had Trey Wisner listed as questionable and CJ Baxter listed as doubtful, you and I were talking about this before we came on, and it's really with these SEC injury reports, at least for me that's been covering an SEC team only for a year now. The SEC was this the first year that
they've only been doing it for a year?
Okay,
last year's first year.
So no one has the data, but I just know as far as NFL, when you say doubtful, that's what that's supposed to technically mean is less than 25% chance of you playing. But when teams list guys as doubtful in the NFL, it's basically what we do in our projections for fantasy and stuff. We just take them out because when you're listed as doubtful, you don't play. So we'll have to keep an eye on CJ Baxter, but I would think that our prediction with Trey Wisner that he was going to be listed as questionable and that Sark would be asked about him and he would not give a straight answer all week. And then maybe it would come out on Friday that he would be a game time decision or something like that. And then he ends up playing. I kind of think that that's how it's going to be with Trey Wisner this week. Another interesting thing that he talked about, Sark, today was when he was asked about this whole Anwar asked him to expand upon the whole thing about, well, can you talk more about what you're saying about how fans are going to need to get used to maybe championship level teams coming out of the regular season with 9 wins and the whole Hugh Freeze thing. Was that Hugh Freeze that kind of started laying this thing out here, or was it Napier? Who was it that said it on the media conference call?
It was Hugh Freeze in a breakout session about a week and a half ago at Auburn.
Okay. Yeah, but it seems like Sark was very happy that Anwar asked that question because he wanted to talk more about it. He
also mentioned, he goes, "It's not my job. It's not my job.
He says, it's not my job as a coach to be able to communicate this to fans." He's like, but for us as coaches, it's something that we're having to acclimate to, and fans are going to have to eventually acclimate to it. Do you think that, for one, do you think that that's true? And for two, I've been of the opinion this whole time that I think that there can be an SEC team, maybe 2 SEC teams, depending on how things fall, that might be able to, that will be in strong consideration for the CFP playoff if they have nine wins, depending on what their 3 losses are.
I think so. I mean, we talked about a little bit on the Prize Pick show. I think it was last week during the bye, sort of like maybe was it or was it the modcast, whichever. We talked about kind of situations of how they could lay out and how teams could make the playoffs or who would make the SEC championships and things of this nature. And when I ran through that prediction model, and I came away with Georgia, Bama, Texas as the top three, it ended up with 4 teams at 9-3. A&M at 9-3, Florida at 9. This Florida thing must have been from preseason. I didn't do
Yeah.
this just now. South Carolina and Ole Miss, all 4 of those teams were at 9-3 at the time of me doing that. And I think in that situation where you look back, and that's going to sound really cocky maybe on the listen back with that with Florida at 9-3. I can't believe I did that preseason. But like the idea of like
it goes to show how things change, man.
And like that's how talented that roster is. But like you look at A&M, for instance, and where they're at right now, if I were to tell you that they drop a game to LSU, they maybe lose a game in Missouri, and they lose to Texas, that's a 9-3 A&M team. And I think the overall thought right now of A&M, who's number 5 in the country, is like those would be pretty good losses because that would mean probably LSU's top 20. That'd mean probably nobody wants to hear this. I know it's Aggie stuff, but like Missouri's probably undefeated or 11-1, and Texas is probably 11-1 at that point. Those are really good losses. Not that any loss is good, but at 9-3, that puts you still in like the top 15, and really depending on the CFP and how they grade you and how they grade your defense, yada yada. I 100% believe a 9-3 team can be in the playoff.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me that Sark's, he's saying it's not my job to tell everybody this. He wasn't telling the media that it's their job either, really.
Yeah.
But little
kind of feels like it is though.
Little hint of that. I mean, yeah. I definitely got a little hint of that. He's like, well, that's not my job. But he didn't come right out and say it.
That would have been funny if he goes, it's not my job, it's your job. Your job to relay that because I'm telling you to say that.
Yeah. So anyway, so just a couple of, I think that's basically it from Sark, right?
Yeah, I think those were the most notables. He talked about I thought he said one interesting thing about Jarrett Gibson. And he basically said he's found his role. And they try to expand his running style. He's a physical downhill runner. He liked how he came back from his fumble a couple of games ago. But he said, in quote, for Jarrett, the best game he had last year was Florida. And he's found a role recently. And I thought that was very interesting.
By
process of elimination or by
necessity. Yeah.
Is it, but I feel like him saying like he found a role, he wouldn't have said that if it wasn't. And I'm not saying this from the perspective of like, he's the RB3 or he's the RB2. I'm saying this, Alex, in the sense that, which is like, you look at like an offense like the Cardinals of about a month ago with a healthy James Conner, a healthy Trey Benson, and the DeMercado, who DeMercado had opportunities, right? Amari DeMercado. It's like, there's a role there for Amari DeMercado. It doesn't really hold much weight, but there's a role there. And that's kind of how I took that with the Gibson thing. Is like, there's a role there for him, but it's not something that's going to be like a 20-30% snap share type of situation.
Are you talking about DeMercado this week for the Cardinals?
No, I'm talking about a month ago.
Back at TCU. Oh.
I'm talking about a month ago when Connor was healthy and Benson was healthy. DeMercado was on the roster getting snaps. There's a role for Amari DeMercado.
But no, dude, DeMercado last week he was in on like 42% of snaps.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. I'm talking about healthy backfield. So healthy Baxter, healthy Wisner. There's a role for Gibson. I think that's what Sark was saying.
Well, there's always been a role. They've used him in these short yardage things. Remember, they call him Baby Rhino and all that. Like,
yes, but I'm saying Sark said that finally, like in the open. Has he ever said that before? Like, yeah, Jarrett Gibson's found his role. Like he literally said he's found a role in this offense. That's
look, man. Here's my first key to victory. I don't think that when let's not have an expanded rule for Jarrett Gibson in this game. I would say let's have Trey Wise. If Trey Wisner is again back healthy, I think you got to get back to a stronger semblance of the traditional run game. And we've talked about how Wisner doesn't have the dynamism of, say, like a Jaden Blue or anything from last year. Certainly not from what they've had years previous. But he's shown that he's a good, solid runner. The run game has left a lot to be desired during the time that Baxter and Wisner have been out. What key to victory is to get that thing back on the rails again.
Interesting. I think I do think that's a key to victory. If they do establish a run game, it'll go far. LSU was unable to do it because they've been banged up in that backfield, and that game kind of was contained, obviously, by the interceptions and the lack of offense by LSU. But one of the higher graded defenses from the run defense is Florida. We know they're big and meaty in the interior, just like Texas is. I'm kind of wonder if Texas doesn't come out with an intention. I know Sark always talks about running the ball and trying to establish that run, and they tried to do it against Ohio State, and they actually outrushed Ohio State and things of that nature. Like, I do assume that they're going to come out and try to do that. But when you look at the difference between pass rush and run defense, there's a clear gap between Florida and a pass rush side of things and Florida from a run defense side of things. As far as the defensive line goes, Florida's a top 10 run defense graded wise in run defense, and they're a bottom 20 in pass rush. And I just wonder if there's a little bit of a dynamic there where they see a hole or an opportunity to drop back a little more often than we might think, and kind of put the ball over the top of their corners, which I talked earlier in the week about my worry about Florida trying to push it over Texas's corners. When I drop my prediction tomorrow over on orangebloods.com, I think it's going to surprise some people from a score perspective, because I do think that these offenses are both going to try and push the football. So I would say a key to victory for me is, like, I understand, and I agree with you on the run side of things, but I would think it's just Arch needs to have his best game of the year so far.
I was talking to a source that's closely tied in with the Florida program, and he was telling me that they have this corner, Cormani McClain, and he
Former
says
number one overall prospect.
He says you can just count on that guy to give you a couple chances on double moves every single game. So maybe kind of keep an eye on that matchup. Whoever is lined up on McClain, if that's something that somebody close to the team is seeing and recognizes as a problem, I'm sure that Sark has recognized that as well. And Sark, this is another one. Like, it kind of goes along with just what Cody had said, but you got to get them out of that. You have to get them out of that shell coverage that they play in. Sark says is exactly what it is, man. It muddies things up as you're going through your reads. He says our fast guys got to play fast. They got to bust out of that. They have to get him out of that, and the only way to do it is to attack vertically. And whenever you do, I think you're gonna have to play fast, even in a game where it's we could have a soggy field and some wet conditions, and whenever you get the opportunity on some of those go balls, they're gonna have to take full advantage. And then my final one, dude, I just think after kind of talking with some of these people, I think what they think's going on with Lagway is kind of like what we've thought's going on with Arch, just a little bit. I was told that it looks like the offensive line has been actively regressing, but he was saying that just when talking about whether the offensive struggles that Florida's had, whether it's been a Lagway problem or a system problem, he's just been saying, like, Lagway doesn't trust what he's seeing anymore, because every time he tries to, someone's taking pieces of his ribs. It's like, I think that one of the keys to victory is just making sure that you get after Lagway and you don't allow him the time to be able to say, all right, I'm going to put, I know Jason says he's always stunk and like all this stuff. I think that's totally cocky. We've seen moments of brilliance from DJ Lagway. You can't, it hasn't been necessarily through full games, but it's been during key points in games where he puts on the Superman cape and he looks off. You can't let DJ Lagway put on the Superman cape. You gotta keep going after this guy. And any final keys for you, Cody?
I would just say the back end. I will continue to harp on this, but I do worry. People keep bringing up weather and things of this nature, and yeah, if it's a soupy mess, we all know how that game is going to unfold. It's going to be a lot of running the football, and you're going to get a few play action opportunities that are going to lead to opportunities. That's what they are. But I do think the weather is going to be fine. I think it's a sub 30-40% chance of rain. It rains every day in Florida, and so we'll see what happens there. But when I bring that up, it's because a key to victory for me is this defensive back group, the Grayson Littletons, the Manny Muhammads, the Jalen Gilbos playing a clean game, because they're going to try you. And you talked about DJ Lagway. I don't think he stinks. I think he stunk in certain games, but you can't deny the arm talent that DJ Legway has, and you cannot deny the talent at the wide receiver position that Florida has in the recruiting class in the last couple of years and the transfer portal from this past year. And they're getting back Dallas Wilson, one of the top wide receivers in the 2025 recruiting class, and they're going to try to press these corners. And if these corners don't get burnt, which is key to victory, if they do not get burnt at all in this game, Texas will win.